Okay, this is a game in the Object 907, the Tier 10 premium reward tank from the last campaign. This is on Live Oaks from the South Spawn. We've done sort of uh, videos on this before, but I wanted to talk about going up here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna move up to this B4 area to basically deny access to the north spawn. And if your team sets up right, that's something that you can do relatively easily. But what I wanted to show in this particular battle is what happens if the enemy team doesn't really send anybody there. What do you do and how do you proceed from there? And that's pretty much what's going to happen in this game. So what I'll do is I'll go set up in the B4 area, and I'll be in position to spot them trying to move into the northwest if they're there. One of the things that I like to do, if I am not in a clip tank, is shoot down these buildings right here. So if you shoot down these buildings on the other side of the street over here, it makes it really a lot easier for your team to be able to shoot these guys as they move through once you like them. So it's always nice to do if your shell will go anywhere near the center of the reticle anyways. And then you can set up on what you want to do is you want to set up far enough forward that you can spot them as they cross. And so like where this E75 is at, see he's almost every tank is too tall to be hidden by that completely, so you can spot them as they cross through that A6 area. And spotting them early does a couple of things. One, it'll set off their sixth sense like it did with this guy. And two, it lets your guys get set up in a position where they can be ready to shoot, and so this is something that we've talked about before. If you have somebody go to this B4 area, what you want to do is you want to push through to the A3 area if you're in a heavy tank right away. And so what you see is that we pushed all of our mediums down into this under the bridge over here, which is a good play from this south, especially if you're in faster tanks. If you're on the north spawn, and I've said this in the stream a lot of times, you want to prevent people from getting up underneath you there, because otherwise it becomes much easier for them to pick off. But the counter to that is, they only have this one E75 on this northwest, which means pretty much every single other tank is going to be down there in that general area. And so that's one of the things that those guys down there need to recognize, is that they're probably outnumbered, 14 to 6, 14 to 5. So, you want to sort of be cautious with the way that you play that, and you wait for the rest of your team to actually catch up to the proper positions. And so these guys have a lot of tank destroyers out in this field, which is going to be pretty easy to pick up.
It's a trap!
And this Waffle's kind of stuck out here on this upper plateau, so if we can take him out, that would be fantastic.
It's a trap!
And then see how our T-54 got up underneath them? That's usually pretty good. You have to be pretty cautious with how you do that, though, because you don't want to get blapped. Especially if I'm going to miss the Waffle. Somebody else picks them up. And then see how they counter push down into this south area, though? Which is essentially what they needed to do, because they had all of their team there. And our tank destroyers, at this point, I don't think have really fired that much. Maybe they might have been able to hit the FD-183, but for the most part, you always want to be able to move up and be in a position where you can be effective. And so I'm moving up through this swamp because I want to get some crossfire over here to help out these guys, but they're already too far away, and so I'm not in a good position to be able to support them. It's just too much of a distance for the terrain that we're on. So we still have that E75 there, and so that's something that I need to keep an eye on, because he can basically keep them off of this underpass there, and that allows me to move through the middle. And what that'll allow me to do is move through the middle into this sort of like E9 area. And this is a similar situation to essentially what they were doing on the south, right? By moving to underneath the bridge over there on the south, they essentially got position where they forced the other team to have to drive over in order to get them. And in theory, if you have guns covering you, that's pretty good. And I have, a Roomba and Taurus behind me. The JT is still too far away, but we should be able to at least get into a pretty good position here. And so I'm just going to keep pushing forward, and then what this position is going to allow me to do, it's going to allow me to spot north and south. I'm not going to really worry too much about spotting directly over the hill. It's not really that big of a deal. What I want to be able to do is spot guys all the way on the north and spot guys all the way on the south. So they still have their FV and their E100 here. And so and what we see is that the E75 lost to the Patton, which is unfortunate. And then all I really want to be able to do is just track this E100 out here. I'm not really in a much more desperate situation than that. I'm not trying to necessarily deal damage. You know, I just want to make it difficult for him to just roll over and shoot me. But since that E75 is dead, this Patton actually represents a risk, so I need to try to take out the Patton here. And this is this principle that I've talked about a lot, but basically what you want to be able to do is clear off a flank so that you can, you know, have basically keep everything in front of you so that you're not getting shot in the sides or the back. And sort of the problem with being in that E9 area is that, you know, the Patton can shoot me from the other side. Yes, the T30 would be able to get shots on him, but not before the Patton would be able to get shots on me. And so you want to be proactive and clear that out. And then now all I'm doing, so I'm up against two tanks that have more health than me, have more armor than me, have more firepower than me, but are slower than me. So what I want to be able to do is just spot them coming in. So I want to be able to spot like this guy, and ideally track and damage, but from the angle that he's at, I can't really do both. And so I know that the E100 is going to be around someplace. And so I see him coming over on the left. And he's pretty full health. So if at some point I'm going to have to push over and attack this FE215B. If only because the E100 is eventually going to get to a position where he can get shots on me. And he's going to try to ram me, so all I'm doing is just trying to spin away from him there. And then my job is to take out the 215B. If the E100 kills me, so be it. But he backs up in order to try to get the gun depression to shoot me, and he backs up into the water, which happens. And then it's the same sort of situation where, so we know that they have 50B, Waffle, E75. It's doubtful that the Waffle will move very much from where he's at. He's probably stayed in that northeast quadrant the entire game. But the 50B is fast enough that he can move around. So again, you know, when you know that you're up against tanks that have more health, more firepower, etc., than you, what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to catch them coming across an open plane so that you can control the engagement. So I'm just trying to see if he's going to try to cross over here, and you can see that he is over on that lower right hand side. And so all I'm going to do is just back up and get behind this 215B corpse and just force him to have to come across an open field in order to get me. There's a T30 behind me right here, who's a little bit too afraid, considering that the 50B will have a difficult time clipping him out. But that's fine. That's how people play this game. But our 3805 is able to take out the 50B, which is certainly very nice. And so the E75 was on that far north over by the Waffle as well. And if you have, that's the E75 that we spotted at the very beginning, so we know that he's, you know, below half health. And we see that he's still up there. And I kind of presume that the Waffle is still up there someplace as well, so I can move forward to the next set of ditches. And then I just want to be someplace where if something pops up on the screen, I can be relatively safe. So I go over here by this hill and corpse, and that way if I spot something I can drop down. And similarly, I'm driving up over this sort of hump, although we see that the only guy left is the C75. But essentially what I would do is I would drive along here, and then if I spotted something I didn't like, you know, I would duck down to one side or the other depending on what side they were on, and that would give me better cover. And then so they're able to take out that last guy. And so really what I wanted to highlight with this particular video was the fact that, you know, we went over to this position, which, you know, was great. We caught the E75 coming across. We basically prevented them from setting up any anchor in town at all, right? They didn't compete with us for this little town at all, and they essentially lost this side. We pushed 4 mediums, I think, into this ditch, which is great. They eventually got counter pushed, and I think that's sort of, you have to be careful when you go over there, especially if you see nothing coming this way, and you know that you have a lot of your support vehicles hanging too far back. You know, if they had enough fire support behind them, they would have been completely fine. But given the fact that they literally had 14 tanks on you know, this in the 9-0 lanes, basically, in these 2 vertical lanes. You know, that's a pretty tall order, and then it's really just a matter of getting up underneath them, spotting, and being in a position where you can deal damage and facilitate your team to deal damage. And then again, once we lost containment on this south, go to the south, clear out that pattern, right, and then keep everything in front of you, and you know, try to let your teammates do some work. And so if we look at the, oops. And so if we look at the stats from that game, so we did 4K damage, and we had, you know, 3.5K spotting damage. And again, a lot of that is just positioning and repositioning and making sure that you're, you know, reasonably active in terms of what you do. And that's the same thing to be said for the team. Like, I think if our tank destroyers were a little bit more active, they would have been able to be in positions to do more damage. You know, I'm pretty sure that those guys damaged the FE-183, but they didn't really damage a whole lot else, and until, you know, the late game, and so that's certainly a drawback, and that's one of the things about playing second line tanks, is that you really have to read the map and understand when you need to move forward, and it's certainly an important part of playing the game. Anyhow, so I hope that was helpful for, you know, what happens if you go to where you want to go and you do what you want to do. You know, like when we went to the B4, you know, that was exactly what we wanted. And what happens if the other team just sends all their tanks the other way? You know, how you need to sort of account for that and figure out how you're going to get yourself in a position where you can make a difference in the game still. So that's about it, and thanks for watching.